Yes, here and then right here.
The one thing you've touched on just a couple of times has to do with working through our third branch of government, which is, of course, the Supreme Court. And if I recall, when things started coming out more obviously with the question, the debate over the Patriot Act, about warrants, the lack of use of warrants, in other words, that there were individuals, when they discovered that they had been violated in that sense, that wanted to take their case to the Supreme Court because they felt it was against the Constitution in that sense. And I know ACLU even was willing to support them. Are they trying to, is there a problem of getting individuals that would take the risk to do that? Or are these individuals that whenever they try to bring a case, are they being bought off by the government? Or how is that possible? For example, recently there were some very important military people who refused to serve in Iraq or Afghanistan. Can they take a case to a Supreme Court that says the war itself is illegal? I mean, it was never declared?
Well, I think these are two very good and very different questions. The first one is about the Fourth Amendment and FISA and laws against being spied on without a warrant. And it is a rather glaring problem. You know, why can we all be aware that they're spying on us all without warrants and not be able to stop it? And you know, one problem is that Congress is cooperatively passing laws granting immunity to those who have committed these crimes without even the privilege of knowing the details of the crimes or the names of the parties to which they're granting the immunity. That is an absolute outrage. You'll recall that candidate Obama's activists on his website and his network during the campaign, their number one demand was that he keep his promise and filibuster any bill that gave the telecoms immunity. Instead of filibustering or even voting no, he turned around and voted yes. And this was after the primary. This was when Hillary Clinton voted no, and a lot of people said, could we have that primary over again? And candidate Obama said, you know, but I'll take care of this once I'm president. I'll handle it. I'll make this all transparent. I'll go after that immunity issue. Well, now the major problem is not a lack of suits. There are suits, civil suits in court trying to succeed. The major problem is that the Justice Department is fighting them tooth and nail and appealing and reappealing and reappealing and telling the courts that we will all be endangered. We will all die if anything is revealed, not just particular pieces of information, but if any court case is permitted to proceed on this issue, we will endanger national security. This is a state secret, and this is a use of the technique of shouting state secret that Bush and Cheney didn't even try, but that these guys are trying to cover up and protect a record of crimes by Bush and Cheney. And then everybody says, oh, well, why would they do that to protect the other team, the guys who call you a Muslim and a socialist and a foreigner and a grandmother killer? But why would you do? Unless presidents have an interest in their predecessors being above the rule of law, particularly when they are continuing the exact same illegal programs, and the teams are really the people with all the power and the rest of us.
It keeps it out of the Supreme Court, in other words.
Well,
because that hasn't been, I haven't heard of any testing that we don't know yet how the court would find things.
You can't just put something in the Supreme
Court.
Right,
I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's keeping it out of the Justice Department.
They take like 1/10% of the cases that they could take every year. It's up to them primarily what cases they take. I would love to see a case make it to the Supreme Court, assuming that the Supreme Court didn't decide to essentially throw out the Fourth Amendment, which is what this Supreme Court might do. But the other question about members of the military refusing illegal orders, as they have a requirement to do in, you know, what came out of Nuremberg, you are obligated under an understanding of international law to refuse an illegal order. So when someone like Aaron Watada or others of lower rank before him and after him refuse an illegal order to go fight an illegal war. They ought to be honored as heroes, but they are prosecuted for their crimes, but not in our justice system, in the military's justice system, right? Where soldiers don't have the same rights that other people do. I mean, ours are all being stripped away, and we don't like to think of foreigners as having any rights in court, but members of our military, don't have the right to a trial by jury. They don't have most of the rights we have. So they're tried in court, and in the case of Watada, he succeeded. And that's a wonderful precedent. And there are others who have refused to go to Iraq or to go to Afghanistan and who have been given jail sentences by the military and are serving those jail sentences. And these people are heroes, and we ought to be supporting them. We ought to be supporting the cafes that have grown up around major military bases that educate soldiers about their rights and responsibilities and assist them through such difficult endeavors. But I'm not a lawyer at all, and I have no idea how you would get such a case to the Supreme Court. And I imagine that the Justice Department would argue quite fiercely that you simply can't, that the military system of justice is separate. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Kind of in response to what you guys were talking about.
Please.
I think that I agree with you that the only vehicle we have at all is the Congress. And I think that the judicial system is probably no more useful than any of the other avenues. I have enough cousins who are lawyers and discuss things with them, but I think it's completely impossible to think that the Supreme Court would ever take up anything meaningful. They would simply just fail to acknowledge that was on the docket that they might look at. But I was curious when you were talking about how to address Congress. I think that it makes a lot more sense to me to think that the one-sentence bill kind of logic could apply and be successful than to say block the funding of the war. Because I think we all know that the system is well equipped enough to supply its money secretly, but I don't really know that would accomplish as much as we might hope.
I think that was a big factor in why they would never really get serious about cutting off the money for the wars, even when they were Bush's wars and therefore bad wars. Before they became the good Democratic wars, they really wouldn't. And when General Petraeus was testifying, you had a congressman ask him, what would happen if we cut off the money and ended the wars, and the president told you to continue the wars, right? And he sort of looked around and said, I have to ask my lawyer. You can't answer that question without your lawyer, right? Because, they all sort of knew that this president was so far gone, so lawless, that, these wars were just going to go on, even if Congress cut off the money. And then Congress was going to look even weaker than it was, right? So that's a concern, right? But for Congress to therefore refrain from cutting off the money is to be exactly as weak as it could ever possibly be. There's a guy named David Obey. Have you heard of him? This is the chairman of the committee that writes the bills to fund the wars. 2 years ago, a friend of mine, Tina Richards, who's a mother of a Marine who had been to Iraq twice already, tried to commit suicide a number of times. The VA wouldn't help him, and they're sending him back for a third time in Iraq. She runs into David Obey in a hallway, and some friends of mine film it, and we put it on YouTube, and it's on all the cable networks over and over again, because he screams at her. He screams at her. He denounces idiot liberals. So of course the headline is the idiot liberals on the TV networks, and essentially what he's telling her is, we're going to end the war by funding it. And she's telling him, these wars that you oppose, could you maybe not fund them? And he's telling her, you idiot liberals, we have to end the wars by funding them. Right? We're going to end them this year by funding them. Trust me. Right? You know, how'd that work out? And last month, you know, some top Democrats, including Obie and Reid and Pelosi, and, you know, went to the White House to talk Afghanistan escalation. This was the day after a lot of us, this was October 6th. On October 5th, a lot of us had been in front of the White House saying, we don't really want a 9th year in Afghanistan. We don't think the 8 years have really shown us what to do with the 9th year, you know, and they arrested us. Well, the next day, the two branches of our government, right, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, go to the White House and say, well, we don't know exactly what they said, but when they come out, Reid puts his arm around Nancy and says, we told the president he wants to escalate a war. He doesn't, don't. It's up to him. We did our job as consultants. And then 2 days later, David Obie puts out a lengthy press release where he now treats support the troops as the exact opposite of what he treated support the troops as before. Right? Just like the Republicans in June all voted against a war bill, which was obvious treason and left soldiers without bullets and so forth, as they told us for the previous 5 years. Well, David Obie, who had said you must fund all wars until they magically end because that's how you support the troops. Well, now he says, you know, as an appropriator, and he capitalizes with a capital A, appropriator, you know, we have to have some concern over whether we're going to fund a war that makes no possible sense, is counterproductive, and so on. You know, people who do that have to be encouraged, right? Because we either have to get a situation like June, where all the Republicans vote no because, you know, the Martians are involved or whatever, and then you only need 39 Democrats or 40 Democrats to vote no. Or we have to get 218 Democrats and Republicans, whatever combination, to vote no for good reasons. Or David Obie alone has to find a couple of missing parts of his anatomy. And that's it, right? Because he does the bill. It's his committee. So when somebody says something like that, you know, it's just words. He voted for more war funding the same day. He said them. But, you know, he has to be encouraged in that direction. I think, you know, there's nothing more helpful. Yes, sir.
Under what circumstances do you think the United States would join the International Criminal Court? Do you think that's a possibility?
I don't think it's about to happen anytime soon. I don't think it's as important as some people might, in that clearly the United States is subject to the International Criminal Court, whether or not it joins it. The International Criminal Court, which recently indicted a sitting president in Sudan, which was not a member of the International Criminal Court. The problem is the dominance of the United States in the world and in the United Nations. The problem is not that we haven't joined. Right? We could join and still prevent them from ever prosecuting Americans. Now, I would love for us to join. I would love for us to stop being one of the few holdouts on all kinds of useful international treaties that give people rights that we don't have. But you know, I think the more important thing is that the International Criminal Court investigate and indict our criminals, which we have made clear we will not do. You can go to prosecutebushcheney.org, which is part of AfterDowningStreet.org, and look at all the ways you can lobby these people and how to contact the International Criminal Court and encourage them, how to contact the FBI and report that you've seen a former vice president on television confessing to torture and you'd like to report a criminal incident. All the ways that you can push all these organizations. But, you know, Italy is very likely this week or next to ask the United States to extradite 23 people to serve jail time in Italy. Spain is pursuing possible indictment of 6 top former U.S. officials, including people like Jay Bybee, for their crimes, with the clear intention of moving up to Bush and Cheney. I would encourage you to be writing letters to Spanish and Italian newspapers, contacting their embassies, letting them know we support. And if the United States does not immediately extradite, We want to let them know about this new tool called rendition. And we've got addresses for where these people live. If they're unclear on how you do it, you know, they can contact the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. You know, I mean, we have to encourage people around the world. You know, there have been unsuccessful attempts in France, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in England, and England is doing an investigation, even of the war lies. There have been unsuccessful attempts that now should be going forward. And what's happened in Italy is very encouraging. We should be telling our Congress, our newspapers, and Italian media outlets, thank you, thank you, thank you. Here are our brothers and sisters. You are going to save us from ourselves. Please continue what you're doing. Yeah,
I think
right
that
here.
we have to, it's 1:45, so.
We're out of
Yeah,
time.
right, we're out of time, but I just want to remind people, you know, you people can purchase the book, and I want also to remind people that David will talk this evening at 7 o'clock in the Peace and Justice Center on forming a more perfect union, rights we have lost and rights we never had. In Bangor, in the Peace and Justice Center, 7 o'clock. We will also talk in the philosophy department at 4 o'clock. So if you want to, and of course people can continue and talk with him privately and ask more questions. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, thanks.
I'll take a look at this stuff.
Just push
Step
it
right
in
up
and
here.